So Not an Accident podcast, episode 1.
Boom.
Make it happen right now. Cesar Hernandez, Omni Public. Thanks for joining episode 1, man. I've been, as long as I've known you, I said I wanted to start a podcast. And then I was like, there are very few people when this is a Tampa-based podcast and we're celebrating some people that are making it happen around Tampa Bay that I would have on this. So thanks so much for joining us.
No, thank you. Grateful. Episode 1, big deal. It's a BFD, and I'm here.
Well, we're happy to have you. And I, just learning and reading about you, and reading your bio and some other content that you've done in the past, and you have an incredible background. I'm serious, man. Coming from New York and then coming a lot of people have that story, coming up from up north, coming down to Tampa Bay, becoming president of the University of South Florida, your student class, I think you were a board of trustee member as well. And then starting Omni Public, which is a public relations firm based out of Tampa, Florida. In early 30s, with all that being accomplished, that's insane, man. So tell me some more about that.
Yeah, I guess everybody has a story. And so I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. And I was raised in an era in the 90s. So this isn't like today's Brooklyn. This is like the crime side, New York Times side type Brooklyn. And it was a very difficult environment to try and to thrive in, right? I didn't realize that until now. Like, for example, New York City has different types of communities, and you'll see the people that are going to like poly prep, right? Or they're in elementary school and they're wearing suits already and ties, and they're already starting to think a certain way. And then you have people like me that was kind of in the hood, and like I'm coming from immigrant parents, and I remember going to the first day of first grade with a plastic bag and a crayon and blank sheets of paper. And I remember going and looking at the other students, and I'm like, something ain't right.
Yeah.
The first time I ever felt unprepared.
That early in life.
That early.
You kind of realized that, maybe it was definitely a difference, and then maybe, you had some additional steps to take, to get to their level, I guess, for lack of better terms.
Precisely. And God bless my mom, but they're immigrants from Guatemala, right? So my grandmother, I think, studied until the 3rd grade, and my mother barely got out of high school, right? And so you imagine like coming into this country. I was born here, but being raised by people that aren't from here. You're learning a brand new system. You're learning a brand new language. You're learning things for the first time for your entire family for generations to come. So I didn't really start at the same starting point as my peers. And I don't realize that until today, where I look back and I'm like, wow, imagine how many minds we're losing that are trapped in the hood or products of their environment that if you nurtured and cultivated them could potentially like make an impact in the world. And so that's kind of like a short version of like where I was raised at. And I'd love to sit here and say, wow, like, my life changed quickly. But by the age of 21, I had been shot at twice. I had been arrested around 6-7 times. What's funny is that my cousin now is a cop, and he works at Central Bookings. And I remember being in a chain gang in Central Bookings in New York City, in Brooklyn. And now he's the cop there. So, but I had to kind of transform the way that I looked at life. And the reason why I value Tampa so much and why I think it's so sacred to me is because it gave me another shot, right? I was able to come down here, go to USF, and threw myself into academia, became student body president, became trustee, launched my career in Tampa, and I love this place.
So when did education, because it seemed like, from the story that you were telling me, when did education kind of become important or more at the forefront? Or until you were kind of in your late teens, early 20s, was it just about getting out and trying to basically create a better life for yourself?
Well, I'll share a story as to why I cherish education so much and what got me thinking differently about education. So when I was 13 is one of the first times that I got arrested. And I got arrested. I was going to a middle school, a junior high school called MS-136, right, Dewey. And it's in Sunset Park. And at that time, I won't say what gang it was because I'm not going to give them credence, but there was a gang that kind of dominated that area. And down the block, there was something called a 300 school, which is all the bad kids from all over the borough that just got thrown into that 300 school. And that 300 school had another specific type of gang that dominated that. So when you're passing by, there's beef, right? There's issues. And so the one gang that dominated the neighborhood, one of my friends thought it was a bright idea to like jump this rival gang, right? And then when I say jump, it's like an extreme level of violence for a young kid, like 13 years old, right? Like extreme levels of like...
As a white kid from Apollo Beach, Florida, you have to explain in a little bit more detail what jumping means. So.
Like, I'll give you an example. So like jumping is just like, you know, like you're going to go and you're going to pop off on somebody, like you're going to beat them up or like, but it's a level of violence that is way,
to recognize that at that age, there's clearly a disconnect almost there.
Yeah, it's a level of violence that is uncalled for. Right? Like I remember I used to carry this knife that was like this big, right? And the reason why people wear baggy jeans back in the day is because you can take your weapons and your knives and they have hooks. So you would hook it to the belt hook, but you'll hook it underneath. So as like you're walking around, you don't notice it. That's the reason, that's the purpose of baggy jeans is weapons.
Yeah.
Then it became popularized, right? And so I used to carry this like Rambo knife, but all my friends were just always carrying weapons. It was just a thing. And so needless to say, we got into this big altercation that my friend was like the main organizer of. And it's just this huge violent altercation kind of just popped off. And then when it was over, we're just walking casually back to school. We call them paddy wagons, which is like a police van.
Of course, yeah.
The paddy wagon pulls up, boop, and they're like, hey, what are you doing? Da, 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 da. And they're truancy cops, right? So they're looking for kids that are outside, not in school. And they said, look, these kids just got jumped. They're a member of this gang. And they said that kids, and they were just reading what we were wearing. They were like, kids that wore this type of t-shirt, this, said that they did it. And then I'm looking at my friend. I'm like, this is a test, bro. Just shut up. And he's like, yeah, I did it. I popped off. And I'm like, oh, my God. Dude. Like, what are you doing? So they're like, all right, well, get up against the car. Any weapons, just throw them on the floor. We don't want, like, additional paperwork, blah, 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 blah. So they did. They got me. They arrested me. They put me in the back of the paddy wagon. But when you get cuffed in the paddy wagon, like, you're cuffed down to the seat. So like, I'm cuffed down to the seat, and we're driving to the precinct. And this was a defining moment. I'll never forget this until the day that I die. The cop makes a stop, right? So he goes out of his way and he makes a stop at this private school, right, called Poly Prep. And he stops. And he goes, all of yous, I want you to look out at Poly Prep. And there was all these kids and they're like in their Poly Prep uniform. They're out. All right, at gym, running laps, right, throwing the football, beautiful surroundings, right? He goes, you see all of those? That's the future of America. And all of yous, you're the future scum. And then he just keeps, and then.
So this was when you were 13?
I'm 13, so he makes a stop. He purposely made the stop to make that statement. And I wish I could have said something to him. And I'm typically clever and I'm like, I can pop out the mouth quickly. But you know what? In that situation, at that moment in time, he was right. And the idea, I had this really infectious idea. What the hell is a Poly Prep? Why are those kids there? Why is it that that name association. This cop he drove out of his way to go to that prep school to try to make a statement. Like, what is this? And that's when I noticed that there was a huge delineation in where you're going to go to school, where you're going to study, and the perception of success depending on the individuals that are going to certain schools or academic institutions.
So how, with everything that you went through your childhood, how did you end up in Tampa, and how did you end up going to USF?
Man, Tampa is it's an interesting story. So
this is what, the late 2000s maybe?
Yeah, like 2005, 2006. So I at one point was obsessed with playing football.
Okay.
Right. So I played high school football. I was on the Brooklyn All-Star team. I went to a community college, played out of JUCO. And when I was playing out of JUCO, I was looking at different schools. I was getting recruited. And at the time, USF wasn't Division I, was like a D1 AA at the time. It wasn't in the Big East.
Yeah, yeah.
And they had sent me a letter, and it was the first time I heard of USF, but I wanted to go D1. Right?
Okay.
I was I want to go to Division I. And so I ended up not going to USF, and I went to the University of New Mexico, Lobos, and went to the UNM, walked on to the team, got my spot, but there was some issues with, they were moving something within the Mountain West Conference, something weird. And they said that since I came from a JUCO, I didn't have my associate's degree, I had to sit out a year, go back, finish my credits, and then come back. And at that point, I was like, look, I'm not, you guys promised me a spot, scholarship, it's out-of-state tuition, I can't afford it. And so if you want me to play, you got to figure it out. And they're like, it's not us, it's the conference. And so you can't play here. So I said, all right. So I went back home. And when I went back home, I was trying to find myself. What do I do? And at this point, I wasn't in gangs. I wasn't, wilding out, doing stupid things. I was just trying to live. So I was working as a landscaper. Imagine landscaping in New York City. I was taking trees and palm trees up to penthouses in Park Avenue, right? And just laborious work, but I don't care. I'm not afraid of hard work, right? 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours, whatever. As long as you're paying, I'm good. And I was just trying to make by. But in that, and this is why I think that environments are important, I ran into some issues with my sister. And so one day my sister calls me, and you got to think, I'm 22, 23, just finished playing college football. I'm jacked. I'm 260, right? I was benching way too much, squatting way too much, eating way too much. And I was just jacked.
Sounds like me now, just without jacked. So.
No, I was a big dude at the time. And she's like, listen, some dudes are following me home, and I don't want to go in front of my house. I don't want them to see where I'm at. And then I said, where are you? She's like, I'm up the block with my friends and a group of dudes that they follow me home. They're in a gang, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm just stay there. And then I just went into an old mode, went up there, handled business. I remember the kids that I got into this huge altercation with. At some point, there was somebody had threw out a headboard. I'm smashing them with a headboard. It's just the instinct. It's just this instinct that turns on when you're faced with so much violence at 12, 13. It just becomes a habit.
You almost don't know any different.
Yeah, it's just and we used to say it's pop off. It just means you just literally just something happens. And so I get into this altercation, and one of the kids pulls out a knife or a weapon. I have a weapon. Then he's like, all right, let's shoot the fair. And then I'm just grabbing whatever I could find. And I go to town, right? Afterwards, they run. And I'm walking back to the block. And this guy, grabs me. He approaches me. And he's like, what are you doing? Who are? And I'm like, what the hell? Who's this? And it's a white dude. Right. And I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, who am I? And I just grab him and I throw him into this Korean nail salon. True story. He falls into the nail salon. He pulls out a badge.
Oh, wow.
Think of where your mind is at, where you just had this huge fight. You're trying to calm down. you're not thinking in the most coherent fashion. And so stupid me, he pulls out the badge. I slap his badge and I spit on him.
Oh, man.
And when I did that, within seconds, boop, they just all descended onto me. What I didn't know is that they were doing a sting operation on my block for some drug deal, somebody selling crack out of a basement. And so they were stationed there. And this DT, detective, got attacked by me.
It's the epitome of just wrong place, wrong
place.
time.
But this is what I'm saying. The environment, right? Like, you don't have DTs doing stings in South Tampa, right? Like, it's just the environment. That was the environment that I was in. And so that occurs, and I'm in a fisticuffs. I'm literally fisticuffs fight with the cops. And my sister tries to get involved, and she goes, "No, you don't understand. This, like, he was just trying to protect me." And one of the cops grabs her and slams her on the floor. And when they slam her on the floor, I was just like, I'm gonna die. I'm just gonna die. Like, I'm gonna go ham. I lost control, and I'm just fighting. I'm just fighting the cops until I see that they were about to draw on me, whether it was gonna be a gun or if they were gonna tase me, but they're stepping back to draw, and this one like Puerto Rican cop like grabs me and like whispers in my ear, he's like, "I'm saving your life," and like pepper sprays me in the face. And then once they all pepper spray me in the face, I let go, because I like, some detectives, they will have cornrows back in the like mid 2000s. Yeah. You know, they try to blend in. I remember I had one of them buy the cornrows. I let go of the cornrows, and then they all jump me. They all jump me, and I'm like, yeah, tough guys. Like, now you jump me. We got, when you pepper spray me in the face. Then they throw me in the back of the paddy wagon, and then I'm on my way to the precinct in Crown Heights. And I'll never forget this, because I see my mom getting out of the train station as I'm in the paddy wagon. I'm like, here I am once again. And I'm like, she's in store for it right now. Long story short, I go to the precinct. I spend way too much time in the precinct. I spend like a day or two. You're only supposed to just be processed. Then I go to bookings. And when I'm in bookings, and central bookings in Brooklyn, I'm on the chain gang. The reason why, and they call it the tombs. And the reason why they call it the tombs is because there's no windows. So it's just a very weird yellow light, 24/7. And then I just remember being there, and when you're in the tombs, everybody, because there isn't a lot to it, everybody's talking about why they're there. And it's processing. So you're there with like the crackhead, the crack fiend, the guy selling the crack, right? The person that's in there for assault, the person that's there for murder, the person that's there for rape, the person, it's just one big mess. And then I'm there. And everybody's going around talking about what they did. And then I remember, they're like, "Well, what's Cesar doing here?" And then somebody shouts from like the back of the tomb, and they're like, "Oh, he beat up a DT." And they just start clapping. Yeah. And I just had this epiphany, and I was like, I don't want these peers to celebrate me, because this is not who I am. This is just the product of the environment I was in. I lost control. And I just remember praying, and I'm like, "Lord, like, I'm not a big praying man, but today I am. And if you get me out of here, I promise I'm leaving New York City. Like, I promise, I'm out." And so in between the toilet and the tombs, right there, I just got down on my knees and prayed. And then the next day, they're processing me, so they send me upstairs. And then the detective comes to my cell, and he tells me to put my face up against the cell. And he just goes in on me. And he's just like, every Hispanic racial slur you could imagine, you this and that. And I just remember seeing him, and like just his face and like his mouth and the spit going on my face. And I just felt something just calm me down and just soothe me. And I remember when he was done, I looked at him and I said, you know what, officer? I'm going to face my responsibilities and I apologize. And he just looked like if I struck him, and he was just in like shock. And he looked at me and he said, Cesar, you're going to plead guilty and I'm going to drop the charges. So I didn't say anything, I just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
They take me, they move me to Red Hook in Brooklyn, to the precinct there to see the judge. And it was weird because they put me in like a cell with glass, like I was like Magneto or something. And I'm up, they bring me upstairs to the courthouse. I'm waiting to see the judge. And I just remember being on that line, waiting for what's next. And so they call me up, and here I am with the cuffs, and I walk over, and then they read everything out, and then, how do you plead? And I was like, guilty. And I just remember somebody coming out from the side, gave something to the judge. He like reads it, and he goes, okay, case dismissed.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay. So they go.
What a second chance. Holy cow.
Huge second. So they go and they take off my cuffs. 3 months later, I was in Tampa, Florida. Go Bulls. Yeah. I was like, go Bulls. And I just recreated. I don't want to say I recreated myself, but I focused on the elements of myself that I always knew needed to come to surface, you know. And I never looked back. So I called up the university, and they were like, who are you? And they were like, look, I need to get out of New York. This is like really how I'm talking to the guy.
The admissions counselor is like, hey, it's me. Yeah.
He's this Puerto Rican dude named Edgardo.
Okay.
And then he's like, yeah, I'm admissions for transfers. I'm like, listen, what's your name? He's like, my name's Edgardo. And I'm like, I need to get out of New York City. And I like tell him my story. And he's like, hey, great story, but I don't know what I can do for you. Like, do you do good in school? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you need? He goes, I need you to go to the winter session of like whatever community college, get me 3 A's, and we'll see what we can do. So I did that. I went, I got 3 A's at Borough of Manhattan Community College, start here, go anywhere. Shout out to BMCC. Called up Edgardo, and he's like, all right, January 3rd, come to USF.
You're coming to Florida.
You're coming to Florida. And so I drove 16 hours straight down, packed up everything in my little Acura TL, and here I am.
So tell me this, and we've talked a lot, about this, about the qualities that, you want to exude to people and you want to share to people. Let's even step back even further. Did you realize at that point that you had received a second chance and that you were going to take advantage of it?
Absolutely, right? I understood that the alternative was 15 years for aggravated assault and me going to Rikers. Right? I was on my way to Rikers.
You were here or you were there.
Yeah. And I have the type of personality that wherever I'm going to go all in. And so the Cesar Hernandez in prison was not what I wanted to become and what I would think that the Lord doesn't want me to be at, right? And so I knew if I was put in a position to thrive and given that opportunity, that I would never look back. And so that's why when I came to USF, I probably won every single leadership award because I applied for every single, I will never take no for an answer. I have this concept that I can orchestrate and create what I need so that I can meet my objectives.
And with that being said, and that's where I was kind of headed, at that point you realized that you had the second chance, or had a second chance rather. Did you start thinking about the qualities that you wanted to exude and the things you wanted to do and the things that you wanted to accomplish? Maybe not in detail on a granular level, but maybe on a larger scale. Did you kind of see where you were headed or where you wanted to head?
I didn't know, because it kind of gave me an opportunity to have a blank slate, to finally create who I wanted to create. I
So you knew you weren't going back there.
Yeah,
that's what you were for sure of, and you were figuring out the rest.
No, I mean, now I go back to New York City, but I'm going like to the financial district.
Yeah, right? Of course.
I'm staying at like Park Avenue. I have clients in New York City at Hudson Yards, but I knew that I had.
Is that surreal for you? Is that surreal to like you go back there?
Oh
like,
my God. I'll digress a little bit. I'll tell you.
Yeah, please.
I'll tell you this one story. So we're pitching this client in the financial district, right? And I wear suits. Like I'm coming in, I'm wearing my suit, I wear my watch, right? I try to present well because I represent outstanding people. So like the reason why I dress like the way that I dress is because I take pride in what I do, and I take pride in like the people that I represent. And so I'm going there, and it's this beautiful office, right? It's in Phi and it's facing north. So when you get out, you see everything. You see the entire city. You see Central Park. Mm-hmm. Right? Billionaires Row. You see the whole city. And then I'm there, and you see the city, and you also see Brooklyn, you see Jersey. And I'm talking to the CMO, and we're sitting down, and we're thinking about working together, and she stops me. She goes, the thing is, you coming in with the suits, and like you just seem too polished. She's like, you just seem way too put together, and like, we're here, but we're kind of casual, we're kind of relaxed, and like, this is New York City. So I just let her wax poetic, and I'm like, ma'am, you see Brooklyn right there? Like, that's where I'm from. Like, how long? I asked her, how long have you been here? She said, I've been here 4 years. I'm like, you adopted this. Like, this is where I'm from. Like all this culture that you're talking about, like you're emulating what I am. And I'm coming here because I'm being me. This is who I am.
She was like, I was in Brooklyn last week, like vintage shopping and stuff like that, and got my new pair of Grey Gooses. Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly. And so, but when I said that, she kind of understood, and they became my client, right? But it's kind of like, like, there are people who may try to like, if they go into places like a New York City and things like, there's a difference of like when you're raised there, right? It's like your birth there, your culture's there. You have a different type of vibe of hunger, right? That's why even Tampa, like I respect people that are like born and raised in Tampa, like West Tampa, the West Tampa crew, right? Like I respect that because although this is my home now, I love it. I'm not the old school West Tampa because West Tampa used to be its own city, right? And like Bob Enriquez is related to the former mayor of West Tampa, and everybody's going to the sandwich shop and the coffee shop, and they're talking with all this Spanish neologisms and broken Spanish. That's why I respect it. I always respect it. And so it's the same kind of respect you have to have when you're like in a New York City. And so I say that to say there's like, yeah, now I go back and it's super surreal. Back to your original point is that no, I never would have thought, but I knew that I had to get myself out of a specific environment and put myself in a position where I can thrive. And when I was at USF and I went after all the awards and I won student body president and I was just running for things, right? I was just like accolades and like, I triple majored, like ridiculous, biomed, poli-sci, econ. I never knew that I was intelligent until I was put in that environment, right? And that's why this is sacred ground for me. Like Tampa, USF, this is really what has shaped my career.
So go into that a little bit deeper. So you excel at USF, and then you start continuing on in the political arena, rather, right? Don't you get a job as, what were you doing rather at that point? So once you left USF, because you were working on campaigns, is that correct?
Correct. I mean, well, the way that it started was when I left USF, I got an opportunity to be a community organizer.
Okay.
And as a community organizer, I was working in like Suitcase City, in the most disenfranchised area of Tampa Bay, literally. And I was working with the immigrant groups, the undocumented individuals, right? The Mayans, the indigenous Mayans. I was working with crime intervention and prevention programs for the youth, housing, all the social services that you can imagine. But I was maybe one paycheck away from the people that I'm trying to help. And I always found myself trying to make policymakers care about that community. And so they will always say the exact same thing. And they will be like, wow, Cesar, I'm so proud of you. Like, you're doing God's work. I'm so proud of you. And I'm trying to read into that. I'm like, I don't need you to be proud of me. I need you to get stuff done. And so I was like, what is the reason why these communities are overlooked? And it's because they're not a part of the political process. They're undocumented. They can't vote, number one. Or if they're coming from a disenfranchised community, they don't vote. So the precinct that surrounds Suitcase City, low voter turnout.
So it looks good to talk about it, but at the end of the day, what gets done is another thing.
Exactly. So I kind of wanted to go down this journey of, well, let me get active in government and see how the sausage is made. And that's when a city councilwoman, Lisa Monteleone, God bless her soul, because she's the one who got me started. And I just talked to her maybe like 2-3 weeks ago. I look at her like a mom, I call her Mama Lisa. And so she's the one who called me up from a community organizer. Like, hey, you want to be my legislative aide and learn advocacy, policy, government, bureaucracy. And when you're working at the city, you are able to then interact with the marble cake that is government, because you're working with the county, you're working with special districts, you're working with the state, you're working with the feds, you're going to all the political events. And so being in that, it was like a masterclass. But even though when I was there, I thought that people within government were probably the most brilliant people. And ultimately some are, but some aren't. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, I want to be a part of the process of who comes into government. And that's when I started working for political consulting firms. And while I was working for political consulting firms, I realized, like, who's up? Like, even the people that are looking to run aren't necessarily running for the right reasons, right? Like, you want to know if somebody isn't running for the right reasons, go to a political event. And if you ask them, hey, why are you running? And they say things like, I got the call, or like, somebody called me from Tallahassee, or I got a call from DC. It's like, that's not the right answer. Those are the people you don't want. If you got a call and all of a sudden, you want the people that are servant leaders, that are like, hey, I'm running because, right? My vision is thus. I'm running because I feel compelled to make a difference in my community.
So do you think they got the call because they're literally going along with the novel of the person that called them?
I guarantee you, if they got the call, there's 3 people calling. It's one, a lobbyist. Like, hey, you should probably do this. I got the resources. I can do that. And there's nothing wrong with lobbyists, right? There's just, they're credible actors in the policy arena. So it's probably somebody like that. Number 2 is maybe a party. So the party's like, hey, who can we put in to run to win? Not, hey, who could we put in that's going to make the most change? And the third kind of people that you're going to get a call is probably somebody in a very high position of power that wants to retain that power and put you in a arena that is going to also benefit them. Those are the 3 kind of calls you're going to make. So whenever somebody says, oh, I got a call, run. It's like, you're in somebody's pocket, or like you're being influenced by somebody to do that.
I haven't gotten the call yet, by the way. So
don't get the call.
I'm not taking the call.
Don't get the call. You want to make the calls. Don't get the call. You make the call. And so, but the reason why I say that is because then I realized that you can really make change outside of that. You could use your leverage, you could use your intellect, your insight. And that's when I got into government relations and lobbying. And I said, well, maybe I can try to manufacture change through the knowledge that I have and move multiple arenas and systems and to meet a specific objective that maybe I want to see in the community. And so that's when I started doing government relations for special districts, the transit authority, and I worked on a bunch of projects, mostly within like tech and with companies like Tesla and Uber and Hyperloop and Ford and working on things with autonomous vehicles, working on vertical takeoff landing machines, air taxis, et cetera, et cetera. And this is like 2015, 2016. So my expertise is really in like disruptive technologies and how to implement disruptive technologies. But then ultimately I realized that the frameworks work the same to catalyze change. And now I do the same for like my clients. It's like, well, how can we, I'm going to use the word manipulate, but in a sense of like, how can we tweak new media like podcasters, content creators, and legacy media? So how can we book you on TV and then do something with a content creator and be able to orchestrate those two arenas and really create titans of industry through that?
And this is where your current company, OmniPublic, came from.
Yes, sir.
So with that, and I want to go into some of the details or some of the teachings that I've seen from you. So, and I guess we'll start number one with, I think a question that a lot of people think they have the answer to, but don't really understand. What's the difference between branding and marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. So within marketing, you're dealing within a specific space, the market. And so you are adhering to the rules of that market. That's why it's called marketing. So, hey, here's your market. Here's the avatar in the market. This is how they operate. Because they operate in this distinctive fashion, this is how you need to operate. So if you run an ad, that's marketing. What you're doing is you're trying to capture people within that market, and then you're trying to convert them because you're selling your widget. Marketing is... And ads are like the giant inflatable waving arm man. It's like a big blank, I want to say it's like a very big net, like if you're fishing with a net. And then when you drag the net in, some people on the net are going to be what you're looking for, but some is going to be trash. It might be a baby shark and you got to throw it back, right? It's not everything that you want. And you have to sieve through that so that then you can go ahead and sell your widget or get your customer, et cetera, et cetera. That's marketing. Brand is different. Brand is I associate with that person, individual, or company, and now I am opting in. Brand is somebody made the choice to come into your arena. And once they're there, they become your audience. And now once they're there, you can prompt them, you can tell them to, purchase my widget, whatever it is. The byproduct is whatever it is that you want, right? It could be money, it could be sign up for my course, buy my sneakers, vote for me, whatever it is. But that's the key distinctive difference. A brand, people are opting in. Once they opt in, they're your audience. And what's powerful about that is your audience will always back you up. So if something negative comes up against you, they're responding. An ad, something negative comes up against you, there's no response. You have to respond. You have to defend yourself because you're trying to signal to your market you belong there. Whereas here, you created an entire space where people are participating to your rules as opposed to in a market where you're participating in the market's rules.
So tell me, I know a lot of people with branding, when we see things on social media about buy my course and selling this widget or doing that, a lot of it comes with, maybe somebody has a fancy house, or maybe somebody has a very nice car, or maybe somebody has a plane, for example, which would be really cool, by the way. I want to get a
plane.
Yeah.
I see you in it.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll full on get a plane. We'll talk about it. But no, a plane would be, I think that's like the new thing. That and a Sprinter van, but obviously a Sprinter van is
Sprinter van decked out.
They are sick. But if you don't have all those tools, rather, we'll call them, how would you start a brand if you're just kind of, just more, I don't want to characterize that as a normal guy, but you don't have those resources.
Right.
So how would you suggest somebody start a brand from there?
The key thing is you have to showcase that you have an outstanding lifestyle, even if you don't have the Lambo yet, right? You are living a life that's congruent with your identity, and the way that it's being showcased is through your brand.
So you're doing what you're saying and you're backing it up, or not even you're doing what you're saying, you're doing what you want to do, and then you're backing it up on top of that. Like, hey, I'm going to get up at 4:30, I'm going to work out. Here's me doing that. I don't go to a fancy private gym. I don't have a personal trainer or anything like that. But I told you I'm going to get up at 4:30. You're not getting up at 4:30. I am. And this is why I'm doing that.
Correct. Like you're waking up early. You're showing people that you're up early. You're showing people that you're bringing in content, that you're consistently learning, because what you're showcasing is leadership. So you don't need the fanciness to begin with. What you need is to signal that you are a leader. And people were subject to leaders. That's just, it's in our DNA. So when we see a leader, we tune in. And that's why brand is important, because then I made a choice to follow this individual on social media. And if you're showcasing me that you love your lifestyle and that you're learning, that you're earning, that you're intelligent and you're doing call to actions and you are influencing opinions, that's what people want to see. There's a bunch of people that are ripped and have the lifestyle nobody wants to follow.
Mm-hmm. No, I get it.
Ripped lifestyle, but they're corny.
Yeah.
They're not leaders.
They're just not genuine.
They're not leaders. They're not genuine. And there's nothing there.
And I think that, and that's kind of where I wanted to hit on as well. I think a lot of people that are trying to create a brand are not doing the research and the legwork in order to create a brand. They're just like, cool, I rented this sick house, or I rented this sick car, or, you know, I started this, or I'm doing that. Cool, look at me. But they're not like figuring out the qualities of what they actually want to exude. They're not doing the internal work. They're not looking at other people that are living the lifestyles that they want to live. And I know when we had this conversation, you're like, look, do some research, look at some people that they're living, and then, and look at the activities that you want to do. And we went through that and kind of the things that I was trying to live by. And I was like, half the people that I follow on my Instagram are doing those things. And you're like, yeah, and that's why you follow them. And it was like a massive epiphany for me, because I was like, subconsciously, I was like, yeah, that dude's really rad, because is a cool guy, because yeah, he's doing all the things that I want to do. And not necessarily, the flashy stuff. That stuff's cool too, but he's a family man, or she's a family woman, or, they carry themselves in a certain way, or they take care of themselves, or they eat at nice restaurants. They do these things and live this incredible lifestyle. So I really encourage people, and I hope you agree, that if you're going to create a brand, do the legwork to create a brand. Don't just start throwing stuff up there. Like you said, like, oh, hey, look at me, I got a six-pack.
What is more important than a brand, and we've talked about this, is what is your identity? Like, who are you as a person? And so, whenever I begin to work with clients, we begin with like Socrates. Why do I begin with Socrates? Because Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, Alexander the Great shaped the entire ancient world. And it's still being impacted by him today, because the New Testament in the Bible was written in Greek. Why? Because Alexander the Great conquered the ancient world, and that was the known language at the time, right? But what is this like ancient knowledge that like Marcus Aurelius tapped into, right? The Epictetus tapped into. And here's what it is. This concept of eudaimonia, of human flourishing. How do you flourish as an individual? It's very simple. What is the standards that you adhere for yourself? So Marcus Aurelius said, my biggest fear is that I let myself down. It's because you, before you create a brand, what is your identity? What are your values? When you have values, then you create a frame. And everyone should adhere to your frame, not the other way around. That's when you start doing that, people see that and they're like, whoa, I instinctually want to follow this person. These are the things that I learned from politics, from looking at, I've worked on people running for school board, and I worked on a presidential campaign. So I've been the entire scope. Right. So I see it. So this is where I'm generating all this information. I'm synthesizing. I'm like, oh, I see it. But you have to make your identity, create your values. From your values, develop your frame. Now you have a frame. Don't break your frame. Don't break frame. This is who I am.
You have to create non-negotiables.
Correct.
There are things that are like, these are the rules of insert my name. These are non-negotiables, and these are things that I'm going to do, and I'm not going back. Whether it's, you know, and it's so simple once you really deep dive into it and you see what other people are doing. Hey, I'm not going to drink during the week. Hey, I'm not going to, you know, eat badly, you know, during this time. Hey, I'm going to set aside, you know, X amount of time every weekend to hang out with my kids. Hey, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. I mean, you have to get in that habit, and you have to basically sign a contract with yourself saying, hey, listen, these are the things that I'm going to do no matter what. And I'm going to plan my life, and the people around me are going to understand that, and they're going to embrace that. Hey, you know, so-and-so, hey, Kev doesn't drink during the week, you know, and it's still okay to go out and have a good time, you know, but I'm going to make sure that my friends, if they really are my friends or my colleagues, know, hey, listen, we're going to go have a great time, but I don't drink during the week. So we can go have dinner and go enjoy ourselves. But, you know, and that needs to be, you know, something that you adhere to. So tell me, and I want to transition to one of the things that I really respect about you is your faith in the way that you address your family and you treat your family and post about your family. So can you tell me a little bit about, you know, how faith and family has really affected your life?
No, I mean, absolutely. And it ties into what we're talking about, identity, right? When you can zero in on your identity, you know what kind of content you're going to produce, you know what kind of people that you're going to work with, that you're going to vet, that you want to bring within your arena. Because remember, people are opting in. So to me, faith is super important, right? Like if you look at my brand, I post about faith, family, community, business. And then I break those down. So if I'm to talk about faith, I'm going to talk about principles in the faith. If I'm going to talk about family, the importance of family, why my wife is the most important individual in my life, right? Why my children come after that. If I talk about business, I'm going to go into nuances of like strategy and business concepts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you notice, like when I post on IG, my audience is my audience. When people come into my stories that aren't my followers and they'll say, oh, that's stupid, my audience responds for me because my audience
you're
knows.
Stupid. No.
But
the internet's undefeated, man. It's a scary time to be a troll.
But exactly. But here's what I'm saying. That's why if you have a really strong brand made up of people that are genuinely following you, and that because they're following you because they identify a little bit of themselves in you. Maybe not exact, but they identify maybe what they want to be in you. And so when you look at some of my comments, I love it because some of my comments, I have other people coming in, no, you're wrong. Like you're doing this, and I'm like, these are my people. These are my like-minded individuals, right? And so that's why and I work with a lot of viral content people, you don't want to be a whore to virality. You don't just want to be like, I'm going to do whatever it takes for clicks because you lose yourself. You don't want to have fake followers. I've had that also because if you have fake followers, you don't know who your audience actually is. So what is it that's important to you? And then mold your content and profess that out into the world and then let people kind of opt in. So that's how I structure things, is faith. So to me, it's the Lord, it's my wife, it's my kids. Then comes my company and my community.
And that's amazing. And these pillars that you've established, again, I think are very relatable. But I want to circle back to your point that you were almost sounded like you were making in the fact that it's okay that your content is not for everybody. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that content creators and influencers and people trying to create a brand make, is that they're like, I want to make content for everybody. And it's like, no, you need to make content for people that are similar to you, that you can actually, what's the point? They're losing the focus of what they're even making content for, because they, are you trying to have a conversation? Are you trying to build a community? Are you trying to grow together? Or are you just trying to put stuff on the internet that you can sell? And people are getting smarter. They are smart. And not even getting, they are smarter, where they see through that quickly now. It's not like, years ago where it's like, oh yeah, hey, I'm so-and-so, because they know now, hey, this dude's just trying to like sell whatever widget, and, he rented that car, and, there's all these, fake buster pages and stuff like that. I like the fake watch one. That's one of my favorites. It's pretty cool. Yeah. And, I think, like I said, one of the biggest lessons, and I've even learned it myself, that you can't make content for everybody, and that's okay. That's fine, No,
you hit it right on the head. You make content for the audience that you're trying to cultivate, right? That's marquee, because here's the opposite, right? And I've worked with elected officials, and I've worked with people running for office, right? When you're running for office, you're running to try to win an election. And maybe you don't believe all the things that you're talking about, but there's a difference between a candidate and an office holder. So sometimes you have to come across a certain way to win. And then when you're an office holder, you can do what it is that you want to do. I know some people that are awesome candidates, terrible office holders. And I know some people that terrible candidates, but would like have transformed policy if they would have got in. And so you have to understand these two mechanisms. And the reason why I say that is because remove politics. If you're just an individual, you can actually be yourself. You can actually cultivate the audience that you want, and they're going to go in and they're going to go along for your journey. And so be like yourself, be congruent with your message, what it is that you're trying to do, because then when you try to be something for everyone, you just lose it. Like I'm not going to say who, but there's content creators that'll do anything for likes. So they're out, and maybe 1 week they're trying to get arrested because they're in the back of a pickup truck drinking, and they're like streaming on Twitch, right? Or there's some that are like, hey, we're going to go now and we're going to go try and catch predators. It's like super random. It's like, to what aim? What's the objective? Like, what is the critical mass, right? So individuals like yourself, they're like, you're an entrepreneur, you're an attorney, right? You have, your company has a specific service, but you have consulting. You can teach attorneys how to create an awesome firm, because you're not gonna learn that in law school, right? This is how you start. This is how you get from 0 to 1.
I can tell you for sure you will not learn that in law school. Yeah.
So it's like there's people that are looking at you that are waiting for you to showcase that leadership and be like, oh, I'm gonna reach out to this guy. I've been waiting for. I
appreciate you saying that, Cesar. So if you want to go to lawkevin.com, I'm kidding. But no, I get what you're saying. It is true, and it's something that I'm passionate about and I have knowledge about, and it's like it's so like I see what you're talking about, and I'm like almost borderline getting frustrated. And the fact that you see it with like whatever the thing of the week is, it's like Section 8 housing, or like this or that, or Amazon FBA, or eBay reselling or whatever, and it's like, I don't even know who this guy is. Like, he just like sold me like right off the cuff. Like, what's even going on here? And it's an interesting time. So if there's anything that I can kind of summarize with, and please continue to enlighten us, but be yourself. It's okay. It's all right to be yourself, and it's all right to share, your non-negotiables, and you're going to get some comments, you're going to get some hate, you're going to get some trolls. That's okay. That's their problem. And if you're doing a great job, the real sign of that is, like you said, your audience taking care of it for you.
Even flip it, right? Think of it in this way. I love trolls because it's like market research. When I would turn on ads, trolls would say, oh, this is dumb, da, 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 da. And I'm like, some of them are like, ooh, good point. I'm not going to engage with them. Yeah. I'll tweak it. And I'm like, all right, they're giving me feedback. Yeah. Or if I'm talking about something within business or strategy, and they're like, no, it should actually be this. And I'm like, huh, good point. Or they make me think. So I almost look at them like thinking partners, as opposed to like take it personal, right? Some are just like, when you click on it, it's just a bot. Leave the bots alone. Like, don't even do it, right? You're just like 2 followers, like no picture, right? But some of them, They actually, I use them almost like a chat GPT. Like where chat GPT is a thinking partner, I'll use trolls as like a chat GPT. I'll tell you a story.
This is hilarious. And it really, I tried not to let people get to me, but this one was too funny. So I started working out a couple months ago and we talked about it, and I hired a trainer, and I'm like, I'm going to really do this the right way, and I'm going to have somebody hold me accountable. Part of the reason I did is because somebody said I was shaped like a pear. So I'm like, it's getting out of hand. I gotta get healthy. So that's a market research for you.
Yeah, but like people look ridiculous, right? They're like, okay, but if you were like say you got the 6-pack abs, you got the 2 Lambos, you got the successful firm, you have the amazing family, they're still gonna say something.
Oh, 100%.
They're still gonna say something.
100%.
But the thing is because
at least they're not going to call me a pear.
Yeah, at least you won't be a pear. Yeah. But the reality is they're unhappy with something in their life.
Of course.
And they're just like, yeah, look at the Lambos, look at the beautiful family, look at the pear.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're corny.
I can deal with it.
You're corny. I'll get dumb stuff all the time. But I welcome it. And the thing is this, right? Like I'm coming from a different environment. Like you won't say those things in my face. Ooh, I'll actually give you one. I'll give you one.
Please.
So I had political trolls, right?
Gosh,
I had political trolls on Facebook tagging me on stuff. Cesar this, Cesar corrupt, this, that. I'm like, corrupt? What are you talking about, right? Just because I've been working in the political arena for almost 15 years. So I grew up with a lot of these people. Like Congresswoman Castor wrote my letter of recommendation to get into a university, right? Like the former CFO of Florida, Alex Sink, wrote a letter of recommendation for me to go to Oxford. But I've been working with them for over a decade. Like they saw me when I was a kid at USF. So I have genuine relationships. And so anyway, somebody points something out, puts up this, they generated an image of me next to an elected official, and they're like, this corrupt politician with Cesar and da-da-da-da, the lobbyist. I'm like, what am I? I lobby for foster youth. I lobby for transportation, tech, equity. I'm like, I lobby for really good things that people find a lot of value in this city specifically. And so talking smack, and I'm just looking at the comments, but not only am I looking at the comments, I'm looking at who's responding. And I'm writing down the names because I have some of their phone numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm calling them. Hey, what's going on? I hear you have a problem with me. Oh, what? No, what? No. I'm like, I'm reading a comment right now. And they're like, and they'll say things like, oh, well, people are, oh, stop right there. Who's people? Oh, who's they? Tell me who they are. Because that's another manipulation tactic.
Oh, of course.
And I'm in communication, so like I pick up on it. They're like, people, tell me who, oh, well, this person. Okay, great. I'm going to loop you in a text message thread right now. Bing, text thread. What's up? I heard she just told me that you said this, that, and the fourth. Oh, no, I didn't. So I will call people. More often than not, guess what? They don't respond.
Yeah.
I'll text them. Hey, what you're talking about? Boom. And then I'll see them in public. And I'm looking at them. And half of them come up to, oh, we got to catch up. I sent you an email and like, let's catch up because, some people, whose people? Oh, okay, you. Okay, cool. Half of them, they'll see me at a political reception, they leave. Half of them come in, start making excuses. So the difference is, you're gonna troll me, I'm not a social media gangster. Like I've been there. I'm coming from a different environment. And the difference is now when I pop off intellectually and with strategy. And I will write your name down and I will never forget. Because in places like Tampa or in Miami or in Florida, it's just a matter of time.
Oh, everybody knows everybody.
It is just a matter of time that I get a phone call. Hey, can you help out this person because of this? Oh, look who's come back around. So One of the best pieces of advice that I ever got is from Anna Cruz. And she said, always be mindful of who you come across because you never know who's going to be your next boss. You never know. Don't disrespect nobody. So I make it my purpose to not disrespect anyone because that legislative aide could be a senator in a year, right? That person with the little baby company could have a huge franchise like Roberto Torres at the Blind Tiger Cafe. One of my best friends had a small little coffee shop in Ybor. Now look at him.
I used to use internet when I was a first-year attorney there. I'd go get a cup of coffee and free internet. Yeah, I remember.
One of the first people I worked with. But you never know. And this isn't a challenge for me because I see it because when people don't do it for me, I kind of get upset. But then I realize that people are, you know, nobody's perfect. But I try to carry myself. I don't want to disrespect nobody. I'm not gonna put another man's name in my mouth and talk bad about them. I'm staunchly against that, even if I don't agree with them. I'm like, I'm not gonna start talking smack about another man or another woman or another person's company. Like I will never degrade it. But when they do it for me or against me, I take no.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for anybody that leaves trolling comments on my post, Cesar's gonna call you. So no, what an amazing first episode, man. What an amazing start. You know, I've wanted to do this for years. Thank you again. And I want to end with this. It is clearly not an accident that you have received. You like what I did there? Not an accident that Cesar is where he is today and has experienced the success that he has experienced. So thank you, my friend.
Yes, sir.
We'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
Like and subscribe. And we'll be back with episode 2 soon. Boom. See you next week.
Yes, sir.